Just 7 points currently separates third down to ninth position in the Premier League. So today we are debating and discussing, is this the greatest top 4 race in history? We're going to go through who we think are going to make those elusive slots, and we're going to discuss, is this actually the best of all time? Reece, we'll come to you first. Currently, as I said, 7 points are separating teams from third to ninth, which is pretty unprecedented. And at the minute, you could probably make a case for any of these teams making it into the Champions League. What do you make on the race so far? And do you think this is the best we've ever seen?
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's a pretty damning verdict for the Premier League when the only thing worth watching is finishing 4th these days. I think that is a concern, and I think that will concern the Premier League going forward. But it's very open. A lot of those teams are very even. It seems to be that the last few years, a surprise team are getting that 4th spot, and then as we're seeing the season after, tend to be struggling. The season after that, so it opens the door for somebody else. Of course, I know we're talking about from third downwards, but I think we can't ignore the fact that a strikerless Arsenal, who keep reminding you the title isn't over, are slowly sliding. And if they lose their next game, they could be even closer to being pulled into that top 4 race. It is good, and it is very competitive to see. Like I said, I think it's a shame that that's the only thing worth fighting for in the league. But it's exciting nonetheless, because the prizes on offer are much better sometimes than, well, financially, and much more important than trophies these days. So it's definitely worth the watch, and could go either way.
Yeah, I think to your point, again, Fulham fans, if you're watching as well, we have excluded Fulham for this, but there is, of course, an argument that they could get into this as well. Jamie, what do you think? Is this the best ever top 4 race we've seen?
Well, in terms of number of teams, currently with 10 games to go, yes. We'd normally have, maybe 4th to sort of 6th, maybe 7th might be in it. But to even sort of argue that Fulham could be in this and they're 10th is actually ridiculous. Is it the best ever? Comes down to sort of the final few game weeks, though. Are you going to get dramas of, I don't know, Lasagna Gate, with Spurs not getting it and Arsenal pipping them in 05-06? Are you going to get, there was Man City getting 4th place over United, both finished on 66 points. It was on goal difference that got it over the line for them. It could be the best ever because there's so many games left and so many teams are playing each other still. It's not just coming down to, can one of the big boys sort of knock them down because they've got tough games left? But I think each team have got to play at least one of them, and maybe more for it. I know City have got to play four of the teams we're talking about left in the remaining 10 games. So that's where it is exciting, because there's big games left for all of them. But I do want to go to Reece's point of, it is an issue that's the only thing people are looking at, because Liverpool won the title. Mathematically, no, but yes, they have. The bottom 3 seem to be the bottom 3. I think it'd be very, very unlikely that that's not happened. And so that is a bit of a problem for the league, but I think that could just be a one-off. But remember, we have had title races in previous years, so I don't think it's too much concern for the league as a whole. It could just be a one-off. But yeah, in terms of, is it going to be the best ever top 4 race? Because actually top 5 matters as well. So the fact there is so many teams in this, there's more to play for. There's more spots open to play for to get into Europe. And the more important one for, say, City and Chelsea is the Champions League. So definitely could be. But I think you've got to have a bit of the drama. Like I mentioned, Lasagna Gate, you've got rivals who are finishing on the same points. It's more drama coming in them final weeks, but it's setting up to be a brilliant sort of turnaround.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The top 5, we've got to acknowledge that, because it is pretty much at 100% now, just shy of 100%, that it will be the top 5. So although we're calling it top 4 and everyone's by default says top 4, it is a battle for the top 5 to get Champions League football, which is a huge bonus to all these teams that are involved, because it's the first time we're seeing it in the Premier League.
So just on that, George, then in that case, with the coefficient barring an absolute collapse, there's going to be 5. What do we think of it? Is it a good thing? Does it encourage teams to maybe up their game in tournaments instead of just resting players and risk going out? Or is it just another a handout? For example, City, by their standards, having a poor season, get a lifeline, when many could argue it's a shame because that could go to another team. In all honesty, what do you think of the coefficient thing, and does it add a little bit more to it?
I think it's good, personally. I don't think it's a handout, because the Premier League is in terms of standards and quality of teams and all the rest of it. We call it the best league in the world. Of course, there is some debate over that, but it is still the best league in the world in terms of quality, money, and talent. So, do we want to see, 5th place at the moment is Man City. So let's assume it's Man City to get 5th as an example. Would we rather see Man City in that Champions League in 5th position, or what? I don't know. This is a really bad example, but Copenhagen from Denmark in the Champions League. Like, I think it's good. I think it's great, and maybe that's selfish from someone who supports the Premier League, but you want to see the best teams competing in the Champions League, and if it makes sense, then I think it's fine, and I think it's a huge opportunity, to your point, Reece, for, let's talk of the teams who are not used to Champions League. You got Brighton, you got Bournemouth, Fulham, Forest. Like, what a massive opportunity this is now for teams like that who are not used to playing regular Champions League football. So I think it's great.
I think the argument for it, I do agree, Reece, it is a bit of a handout. Like City being 5th, if we go and get the Champions League spot by finishing 5th in our poor season, it's going to be more of a few from a City point of view, not we've got top 4 kind of scenario. It is a bit of a handout in that, but because of the way that the format's changed, there's now more teams in it. So there's no actual teams that have missed out because of this. All they've done is add an extra team or an extra few teams, how many more it is. So no one's losing out as such. That's how I kind of see it. So I don't think it is a team losing out. But also, on the other hand, like, if teams are added in, City's added in, say City get the 5th, teams that don't want City to get in that, because they want more chance of winning it. Like, City have been the favourites to win it, I think, for 3 or 4 years, along with like Real Madrid. So if City are not in it next year, more teams are going. Right, that's one club gone, who are in the bookies odds anyway. City weren't good enough this year, but Real Madrid don't have to play City for the 4th, 5th year in a row. So they'll be like, thank God for that. Like, just because it's a difficult game. So I think some teams will be like, yes, this gives us the extra lifeline. But overall, they might actually be like, I'd rather not have that.
Yeah, I think that's true. But at the end of the day, if City finish 5th, it's because they're the 5th best team this season. So, and we've seen that this season, right? The Man City have not been the Man City that have been favourites. They've been an absolute shell of that team. So, all in all, I don't think it matters personally.
No, like before we discussed it more about the top 4 thing, it is interesting because it gave Bologna and Borussia Dortmund a chance last year. They didn't finish in that top 4 slot, and they got it. And it doesn't sacrifice another team, and I think it's good because you can't fall back on it. If we look, because if all the English teams left get knocked out now, and all the other countries do better, this is what happened last year. It opened up the doors for other countries. So I don't think it's that bad, and you can't fall on it. It adds more jeopardy, I suppose, because if it's just between 4th, 5th, and 6th, there's that element of, we can't risk this, so to speak. But I don't think any of the teams are taking it for granted. They know if it all goes wrong, they lose it, and that'd be a cruel twist of fate if you finish 5th, say an underdog, and you lose it because everyone else got knocked out. But I just think it's an interesting thing to ask and see how it all goes.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, I didn't actually have my say on is it the best ever. For me, yes, it is 100%. The fact that this many teams have a genuine chance and opportunity to get a Champions League spot, plus the addition of the 5th spot, I think it is the most exciting we've had. I get the point on will there be drama. I think if you look at the maths and you look at the fixtures, it's basically guaranteed. There will be teams fighting on the same points. There will be teams nicking it in the last week. So, I'm loving it. I think it's great. And the fact for us, the clubs who are in it, it's almost every game in the Premier League that you're watching outside your own club has jeopardy now, and it's great because it might be bad or good, however you want to flip it, but every game now almost has a bit of meaning for these clubs involved. So I think it's great.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Aston Villa are on a -4 goal difference, and they're in the battle for a top four.
Yeah.
That just says it all right now,
Crazy.
doesn't it?
Yeah, I do want to add on to that point, because after the Forest defeat for City, I then was looking at the Sunday fixtures going, right, I want Chelsea not to win. I want Bournemouth not to win. I wanted, and it was West Ham Newcastle and Newcastle not to win. So that's just three games out of the 4 on Sunday and Monday that I wanted to look into the result. Now, would I rather be at the top? Of course I would. But yes, it does add to that excitement. There's no nothing games at the moment, which is definitely good for these sides anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, let's get into it then in terms of who we actually think has a chance. We've said all the teams down to 10th have a chance, but we don't have time in this episode to go through every single team. So for me, I think, I mean, I'm looking at the table and I'm trying to make a case for everyone, but I think the teams in the mix at the minute in order are probably still the most likely. So you look at your Forest, your Chelsea, City, Brighton, and Villa. Again, Bournemouth have been impressive. Newcastle we know are good. Fulham we know have been good. So it's hard to cut off teams in this list, but I'd probably say the top 7 at the minute do statistically have the best chance. And let's talk before we maybe go through some of the teams that we think can and can't make it. We will share this graphic, so make sure you're following us on Instagram and TikTok as well. But we have got a graphic that basically shows from Opta Analyst how difficult the remaining fixtures are for all of these teams. And if you have a look at the minute, Fulham do have the toughest run if you think they're in the race. But Chelsea, in terms of the bigger teams, have the toughest run. And to flip that, the easiest run at the moment is for Man City and then Nottingham Forest. So, Reece, we'll come back to you. Who do you think is realistically in this race if we've got to cut some teams out of this conversation?
I would probably argue that the current top 5 will be that 5 by the end of the season. Whatever order that is in depends on who blows it in whatever way. I think I look at some of these teams here, like I mentioned about Aston Villa being in the race with a -4 goal difference. I mean, you can't have a minus goal difference or a low goal difference. Come on, Brighton, I think, could cause themselves a poor defeat. I think they're capable of that. They've drawn too many games. City's issue is they're not drawing, they're winning or they're losing. It's one or the other with them at the moment. That's their problem. Chelsea, I think, will get over the line. Maresca did it last year. I think they'll be fine. Arsenal should have their players back around April, when the pressure's off, obviously. Forest, I think their win against City proved that they've done it. I think they're over the line. Bournemouth throwing it away to Spurs. I know I'm going through a big random list here, but Bournemouth throwing it away to Spurs was an issue for me. And Newcastle, I fear for them with the League Cup. If they win it, I think they'll settle for what they've got. If they lose it, it could affect them mentally. So yeah, I would go with that. I think the top 5 is probably going to stay as it is.
I think that's quite interesting. Kind of with Forest, I was going to say, basically, if they lost to City, that would have been, I think, 4 or 5 games in a row where they hadn't picked up a victory. And then I would have said they were actually spiraled out and not got in the top 5. But because they did win, that just gives them such a massive boost. I think they will now get over the line. They will get it top 5. Chelsea have to get the points before the final 4 fixtures, because in them final 4 fixtures they play Liverpool at home, who may have won the title by then, but they may need to just win to get the title done. Newcastle away, United at home, and United seem to turn up for the big teams and be crap elsewhere. And then you've got Nottingham Forest away on the final day, which could be huge. It could be absolutely huge if both of you need points to confirm the top 4, top 5. So if Chelsea don't have enough points by that sort of four teams left, 4 games left, I think they could be in big trouble because they've also got the Conference League. So it's not like they're just fully focused on the league. So that's where I think their problem could be. And then if you look the rest of sort of the table, you've got City, well, you've got Forest as well. City, Forest, Brighton, Villa, Bournemouth. They're all in the FA Cup, and Fulham as well. They're all in the FA Cup, so they've still got something else to play for, which can be a distraction because for most of them teams, they've not used to playing at Wembley. City do have played at Wembley quite regularly.
Every week.
So every year we've been there. Pep's sort of, I think it's like 6 or 7 in a row we've got to the semi-final. Touch wood it is again, but we're playing Bournemouth in that as well. So that could give you some psychological boost or downer on that. So there's a lot to play for in these games, but I'm leaning towards Chelsea not getting it. Just I don't know. It's sort of like I think it's because you've got such a hard final 4 games.
They've got the squad though. They've got 3 team buses. Yeah,
but they don't all play.
So they're not going to be tired. Yeah, but they're not going to be tired. The Conference League's got to
play. You're going to have to play your best. You should play your best team because you want to win the Conference League now. You're getting to the stages where you play your best team, and then you've got to play your best team in the Premier League. Otherwise, you will get beat.
And we have got injuries as well. I know we've got a big squad and it's not less of an issue, but we have still got injuries.
And you could get more injuries because you're having to play the sort of the players that you don't really want to in that competition, but you've got to go and win it. And if you're the manager, you're going to try and play your strongest side. You're not going to rest for the top 4 or 5 in the Premier League, in my opinion. But then, and then if you're looking at the other teams, sort of, as I mentioned, they all got the FA Cup. A lot of them got the FA Cup. They all will implode on themselves. I know, sort of, they all will. That's why I think this could make it really exciting because every one of these teams can implode. Like I said, Forest didn't win the previous 3 games, so it's not like they're immune to it either. City do the same as well. You don't know. One week we looked brilliant, beating Newcastle comfortably. Then we looked absolutely terrible. Well, it didn't look like we could create anything against Forest. So that's where I think it can mix it up a bit.
Could you imagine if that 5th spot actually, instead of giving it to 5th spot, it went to the winner of the FA Cup instead? Could you imagine that? Because the Cup has lost its magic. Let's be honest, it's slowly dying. Could you imagine what incentive that would give teams then? You'd see a whole different attitude there. And with the way it's panned out this season, there'd be a do or die towards it. It'd be insane.
I think there still is, though, because it's City it's going to sound harsh, but the only big team in the FA Cup. If City go out, and let's say Bournemouth beat them, it is massive because for the clubs left in it to get a Europa spot and win a cup would be, ridiculous. And we're talking about, Bournemouth and Fulham in the Champions League race. But realistically, their fans will be absolutely buzzing just to get into Europe. So even without it being a Champions League spot, I do think this could be. I kind of we all want City to lose. Just we want to see something different. Sorry, Jamie. But if City,
the records,
if City do go out, it's honestly going to be one of the most interesting. On paper, not as exciting, but it will be one of the most interesting FA Cups we've had in years because there's so much on the line. So even without that, I think it's crazy, and it could be such a good end to the season.
Right then, I think let's actually go over who you're going for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Got to put them in order. Don't just pick the 3 teams. I'm going to start with you, Reese, because I think you kind of said your 3 teams, but I'm now saying you've got to pick an order.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think Arsenal in serious danger of slipping to 3rd or 4th, but I'll just go with I think it is going to finish Forest, I think Man City will just take it, and then I think Chelsea will get the 5th spot.
Okay, Jordan, what about you?
I'll start with what I'm confident. I think Chelsea will be 5th. I'm not confident that we're going to get it, but what I mean is I'm confident that Forest and City will finish above us. The reason I say that is just the fixtures, as we said. Forest and City have the easiest fixtures out of all the teams, and Chelsea have the hardest. That end run, as we said, the last 4 games is pretty grim. And United at home's the easiest one, and they're our bogey team we can't seem to beat. So, yeah, I think hopefully we can nick 5th spot. As I said, 5th spot in a Conference League, I'd be absolutely happy with that. Back in the Champions League. The current debate, and I still am not confident. I do think it will be Forest and City. I'm going to mix it up just to be a little bit different, and I'm going to say City finish above Forest. So I'll say City in 3rd, Forest in 4th, Chelsea in 5th. I just think the fixtures are easier. City will build a bit of momentum and go on a run. We know they can. And Forest, as you said, dipped off a little bit. So that's my logic.
Okay, and I think I'm the only one who's got a slight difference to you two then. So I'm going to go with Forest in 3rd. I think because of that win against City, I think that cements them there. Then I'm going City in 4th. And then the final spot, I am going to go Newcastle. The hesitation I have of that is because of the League Cup final. I think they will lose to Liverpool. But I think they've got the firepower with the sort of Gordons, Isaacs, the midfield 3 they've got. I think is good enough to push on a bit, and they're not too bad on the fixtures either. So yeah, I'm going Newcastle for the 5th place, and Chelsea miss out. But you'll probably go and win the conference. So
Yeah.
you got Europa League either way, in my opinion.
Yeah. To be honest, on Newcastle, actually, we've not really discussed Newcastle, but because they've got the game in hand, you're right. If they win that game in hand, they're actually level with City. So we might have. That's probably not a bad shout. We might have just completely written them off based on the fact they've played 1 less game. So, yeah, really, really interesting. Look, we've had our say. Now we want to hear from you guys. What are your predictions for those 3rd, 4th, and 5th spots? And do you think we're wrong? Is there any teams we've not even mentioned that you think could be in with a chance? But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. You know the drill.